Hello. Oh, what's up, Maya? Hey, girl. Hello, hello. Okay, it's 5:29. I don't think I said. I don't think I started it too early. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. So I'm just going to. I know. Hello. Class is in session. I'm so glad you're here. Um, so we are just going to discuss real quick the illusion of safety, right? Something that I really wanted to get to is kind of more about pattern breaking and how you essentially end up staying in the loop, right? The behavioral loop that you're trying to break free of. And so, one of the things that I know for certain is because humans at their baseline are animals, right? And your nervous system and body are charged, right, with the responsibility of making sure that you survive. It will not allow you to go beyond what is safe, right? And so when I think about people breaking patterns, right, or doing something that is unfamiliar or, trying to wait on their nervous system to tell them that it's okay, like everything is fine. I mean, the thing about doing anything new or breaking a pattern or disrupting a pattern is that your nervous system will actually never assure you that everything is safe, right? Because it wants to stay in the familiar. And, I don't blame it. But the thing about it is, if I am an animal at my core, then I am not supposed to rely on the animal to take me beyond its nature, if that makes sense. And so what makes me an animal is my addiction to the familiar, right? What makes me beyond the animal, right? What allows me to ascend beyond the animal is my ability to choose, right? Unconscious patterns, my indulgence in unconscious behaviors is what makes me animal, right? And so this means what is safe, which is also what's familiar, right? Like pain and whatnot. That is enough for your nervous system to stay in that state. Like it won't move beyond it, right? Because if I've only known this pain, this obstacle, whatever it is, my body, my nervous system is going to tether itself to what is familiar because it knows what's next. It knows what's the next pain point. It's memorized all of the triggers, right? And so when I ask people to do the opposite, I'm not asking you to verify it with your body, right? Your body is not going to allow you to go beyond what it feels safe with, right? So you kind of, I don't want to say you have to ignore your body, but when it comes to choosing a different timeline, you kind of do have to ignore your body, or you have to go not against it, but kind of beyond it, right? Like, I don't know if you guys read my newsletter, but it was the nervous system and your body, which is that of an animal, is kind of your master up until you become the master of both your nervous system and your body, right? In the beginning or whatever, in terms of what dictates what you do and why you do it, it's your, not only your unconscious patterns, but it's your primitive nature that determines everything, right? And so what I'm asking people to do is to go beyond their primitive nature. So it's supposed to be uncomfortable, right? If you're dealing with a coach, right? The thing about it is your coach is to reveal to you parts of you that are hidden from you, right? And so if I am revealing to you parts of your person that you could not see, I the beautiful thing about that is that I am almost installing in your subconscious a new belief based on the unseen, something that you could not see by yourself, something that was not revealed to you unless you were under pressure, right? I mean, that's the thing about, I feel like even what I'm doing right now, when you are doing something new, you're not asking yourself to be ready. If I'm teaching a person how to swim, right? I'm not going to, it's not enough for me to explain to them how to swim. I have to put their ass in the water, right? I probably need to stop cursing. Anyways, I have to push them into the water, right? Maybe I don't need to traumatize them per se, but they absolutely need to get into the water. Otherwise, they will not learn. And so that is what pattern breaking kind of is, right? We're not relying on the vessel to tell us what to do, right? We're trying to get beyond the body. We're trying to get beyond the animal. We're trying to retrain the animal. The animal is the nervous system, right? That animal, that nervous system is addicted to not only to what's familiar, but it's addicted to the emotions that are attached to that familiar reality, right? And so when I think about how do you stay in a reality that is, you know, I don't want to say not yours, but how do you stay in the familiar, right? How do you stay stuck in a familiar reality? One of the ways in which I can keep you stuck in the current, right, is by rewarding you, right? So if I want to keep a person, your personality, which is your personal reality, right? If I want to keep you in the current, what I'm going to do is I am going to validate your current personality, right? Your current way of being, so that you stay in the loop, in the behavioral loop, in the pattern, right? When you think about disconnecting from your previous pattern and going into a new pattern, there will be grief attached to that because you are severing or shedding an old identity, and everything that anchored the old identity's reality. That includes people, that includes opportunities that came your way that was attached to that old identity, right? These are all rewards, connections, relationships, right? These are all rewards that keep people anchored in realities or timelines, right? And so when you think about, not quantum leaping, when you think about, well, yeah, I want to say quantum leaping into a different timeline, right? You have to get around people who are of a different frequency, a desired frequency. You can't, I forgot what the Bible says. It's so funny how it kind of says everything that I'm saying right now, but you can't rely on what you know, right? Because, right? Exactly. Because it's like, if I rely on what I know, then I cannot get beyond where I am. And one of the things that I explained in my paper, I sent it to you guys so that you guys can, you know, like that's like a little free read for you guys. But one of the things that I discussed in my paper was, when you think about going into a new reality or timeline, I want you to think about your subconscious being your antennas, right? So, for example, when I think about new timelines, what I'm thinking about is timelines that are independent of me, that exist, right? Everything that my subconscious comes up with in terms of outcomes, desires, realities already exists, right? It exists in the 4D. It doesn't exist in the 3D. We are in the 3D. What makes this 3D is the density, right? You can see me, right? That's why, that's what makes this a 3D. That's the confirmation, right? Is the fact that you can see me because I am dense and therefore of gross matter, right? So that's one. However, when I think about alternate timelines, right? What do you call it? The multiverse, right? where multiple things or multiple timelines that I imagine, right, by way of my imagination, they already exist. The only thing that is separating me from my desired outcome or the desired timeline that I would like to inherit is the frequency of that timeline. So for example, there are frequencies that millionaires and billionaires embody, right? This is what separates them from those who are not. It's not just necessarily how much they make, but it's also what they do and who they are in order to maintain that amount, right? So you can get that amount, but if you lose it just as quickly as you got it, you're not really a billionaire. You just got $1 billion that day, right? And so you have to become something new, someone new, in order to maintain something that requires a different frequency, right? And so when I think about moving from one identity to another, all I'm really doing is tuning into a frequency that is separate from mine's, right? But this desire, this imagination already exists, right? It's just a matter of me tuning into the frequency. It's like tuning into a radio station, right? That's kind of what I'm doing, but with my mind, right? But it's not enough to imagine the desired outcome. You have to be around people who are already embodying the desired outcome, right? And then when you are in community with those people, there are new reinforcements, right? So in order for me to anchor you into the new identity, there has to be some type of reward. That is a reinforcement, right? That's something I can use to keep you in the new so that you are less likely to go back to the old. Another reason why people stay in an old pattern or an old timeline is because not only I feel like I already said that there's an old reward and therefore emotions that are associated with those timelines, right? Like, for example, if you're addicted to being needed and I'm trying to graduate you beyond that, let's say in survival mode, that was the reward. You're going to be tied to that state of being, not permanently, but as long as your subconscious and your nervous system associates the old timeline with the reward that you are still attracted to, you are less likely to break the bond between you and the old timeline, right? So what has to essentially occur is you have to no longer, your body, your nervous system has to no longer see the old timeline, not see it, but it's almost like you have to not be attracted to the reward, the old reward, right? Like you have to almost like who I was last year and the people associated with that person, the rewards associated with that person is no longer attractive to me enough for me to regress back into the old pattern, right? And so I can no longer retrieve it because my nervous system does not associate that reward as necessary enough to retrieve, right? And so I essentially have to almost reverse engineer where the old pattern, it becomes unattractive and unnecessary to my nervous system. Like the reward isn't worth it, right? So it's uncomfortable for me to go back. It's like that. So it doesn't, that's how you know that you are anchored not only into the new identity, but you've gotten to a point of no return, right? So you cannot go back. I think something else that I may have not mentioned, I think I mentioned that, making sure. Yes, I think I did that. Yes, I did that. reinforce the pattern. That's how you create. Yeah. Did I actually, I'm not sure if I discussed this, but I think I said this already. You have to feel safe, right, in this new self. Otherwise, you will retreat. If there's any type of punishment or too much pain, right, because you naturally avoid pain. That's how you keep people in control, is just, add a little pain, and they won't go here, but they'll go this way, right? But you have to, in order to feel safe in the new identity, you have to get familiar with that new identity. All that means is that you have to stay consistent with the pattern long enough for your nervous system to now associate this newness with the new safe, right? And so that is my goal, actually. It's one of my goals for the paper that I wrote, but it's my goal for the strategy session that I just put together, where I'm basically going to be, it's a 2-hour deep dive, right? It's a pattern breaking session. And what I'm essentially doing is we are going to first identify your behavioral loop, right? Then we are going to go back to its roots, so the belief, the memory, and the triggers that are tying you to the loop, right? After that, I'm going to customize a 30-day mechanism for you to stick to, and rituals that will keep you anchored in that new identity, right? So this is a map, right? So that you can get to know parts of you that may be sabotaging you, right? Or limiting you when it comes to a goal or something that you really want, but that seems intimidating, when it's really not. It's just a matter of touching the frequency, tuning into the frequency. What does it feel like to be this new person, right? So that's what we're going to do, so that we can anchor you into the new identity. Now, if people want some type of weekly reinforcement, that is where the 4-week container comes in, right? Thank you for the follow, Steve. That is where the 4-week container comes in, 4-week coaching container, and that is where we actually reinforce for 4 weeks, weekly, right? This new pattern, right, that we have already customized. But what we need to do is weekly there will be some type of reward. Weekly there will be some type of check-in, right, to make sure that you are on track. That's how not only you create the pattern, but you keep the pattern ongoing. We're trying to create a new groove in your brain, right? A new neural pathway, right? So that you can stick to it. And then you'll be surrounded by others who are on the same path. They may not have the same goals, they may not have the same pattern, but the point is, everyone in there will be everyone in there will be breaking a pattern, right, by way of enforcing a new pattern, right? And then we will enforce this by way of weekly check-ins and whatnot. But you cannot get into that unless you take the prerequisite. The prerequisite is the strategy, the pattern breaking strategy session, right? 2-hour deep dive. Essentially, you cannot get to integration until we first go over clarity. And that's what that 2-hour one-on-one pattern breaking session is. It's clarity. But it's no point in getting to integration if we don't know what exactly we're integrating, if that makes sense. So that's what that is, right? And in case anyone was interested, I'm going to repin the form. It's just a form, right? So I get to know what exactly am I working with, and I get to tailor the session. And, it basically tells me whether or not you're interested, and, whether you want to do this now or later, stuff like that. It's free, so there's no type of, none of that. It's no type of charge with this. It just gives me insight So let me see. Trying to see who else I need to share this with. Probably a lot of people. Maya, if you feel like this session is helpful, go ahead, if you can, maybe share it with, I'm sharing it right now, more people right now, because I've already told some people. Oh, hi Curtis, hello. Oh, did not mean to do that, I'm so sorry. But yeah, go ahead and share it if you feel like this is super helpful and it's kind of giving you insight into what, oh, thank you. Yeah, into what your subconscious is kind of doing. Oh, another thing, the subconscious is such a beautiful entity. It's truly an asset, right? That is one of the things that we're dealing with. We're not just, dealing with the nervous system, we're also dealing with the subconscious in the strategy session, right? Because if the subconscious is the holder of beliefs, fears, memories, patterns, right, and whatnot, you need the subconscious to support you in transformation, right? And so, I don't know why that does that. What that means, let me, thank you for sharing, thank you. You need the subconscious to essentially support you in this transformation. And like I discussed, I think in the last live, your subconscious cannot support you in anything that it has not seen you do continuously, right? And so this is why you have to essentially break a pattern in order to get the conscious, hi Kyra, hello, or Kiara, my bad, in order to get this new, God, I feel like I just got off track, like my brain. What I was saying, backtracking, you need your subconscious on board, right? The minute you do something that your subconscious has not ever seen you do, the first thing it's going to do is sabotage. And the reason why is because you're dysregulating yourself. There will be dysregulation by way of creating a new pattern, right? And so there will be resistance with self because the subconscious and the nervous system are like, we've never done this. Not only have we never done this, but this has not been the program, right? And so the goal is to not only create a new pattern, but for your subconscious to support you in that new pattern. So all that means is that once I have successfully created the new pattern and my subconscious and therefore my nervous system, which associates an emotion with this new pattern, right? Once my subconscious and nervous system are on board with this thing, I don't have to constantly remind myself to get it done. It'll just get done, right? It'll be the new subconscious pattern. And so what that means is that I will not need an accountability coach. My subconscious will be my accountability coach because it will not allow me to pivot. It will not allow me to do anything else unless I complete the pattern, right? To me, when you complete a pattern, this is how you regulate your nervous system, right? This is how you get to that calm, right? But when you are dysregulated and, you start, don't complete, start, don't complete. First of all, I don't want to say it's hard to survive, but when you don't complete anything, it's hard to get to a desired outcome, timeline, reality, identity, because all of these things require you to complete something. They require you to stick to something until fullness, right? And so the goal is to reinforce this pattern until your subconscious holds you accountable, right? And the subconscious is making you reinforce the pattern, right? I think, like I said in the last live, it will not let you sleep until the pattern is complete. And I really think that that's because I want to say your subconscious and your beingness kind of desire wholeness, integration, oneness. And what all I really mean by that is everyone is on the same page. Your nervous system is on the same page as your desires, your mind, your conscious, your subconscious. Everybody is on the same page. We're all moving in one direction, right? It's not, I have these desires, but my subconscious can't support me in these desires because it has never seen me complete anything, right? And so it cannot hold me accountable when I'm tired or I feel anxiety because that's the thing, these emotions are going to come up, but the goal is for your subconscious to, oh, hey, Jessica. Oh, do I have that? Oh, right. Hey, girl. The goal is to get your subconscious to bypass these emotions, right, that may present themselves as resistance, if that makes sense. And so you remember what I said in the last live, we're not trying to get rid of the emotion, we're just trying to pivot our reaction to the emotion. A lot of these emotions are not only natural, but they're inevitable, right? You are going to face resistance within self before you do anything new. And it's going to feel like that until it becomes your new safe. But what you need so that you are not moved by the pendulum of your emotions, the chemicals that are generated, the chemical reactions that are generated from emotions like anxiety, and anxiousness, anticipation, and all of these things, is you need your subconscious to be on board, right? Your subconscious follows patterns. Your subconscious follows consistency, right? Doesn't give a damn about your emotions. I mean, it does, but not really, right? Your subconscious almost desires, I don't want to say almost, but it does desire consistency. This is why when you say, oh, I want to do this, but you can't, it's because your subconscious it respects repetition. What have you been doing consistently? Have you been completing consistently, or have you been starting and stopping consistently? And so it doesn't care about your desires, it cares about your patterns. What are you doing consistently? That's what the subconscious can support you in. And so we're not really just hacking the nervous system, we're hacking the subconscious, right? That is the ultimate accountability coach that will keep you from from falling off or regressing into an old pattern, right? Eventually your nervous system will come on board, because when you are around people who are doing the same thing, the rewards are different. And so what is reinforced, exactly, and I realize all this stuff by trying to change myself. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when you do this stuff, essentially when you study yourself, you start to learn these things about yourself. It's like there's multiple yous. Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I love that you said that, because in a sense there are multiple yous, right? We're not singular people. And what I mean by that is there is, the I, the id, and what is the other one? The ego, right? And they all are almost like different point of views, right? There's like the observer. The ego is kind of like the analytical mind. Everything needs to be proofed, right, for the ego to move, right? And so you have almost like three identities in one body. In a way, it's really interesting. And so it's honestly, it really, I don't want to pivot the conversation, but it kind of makes me think about when people desire not wholeness, but when they are looking for their other half in other people, that is a lie, right? And that's because these multiple yous that are within self, right, that have desires of their own, they require integration, right? It's the wholeness that people seek is not by finding something outside of themselves, it's by becoming fully integrated with all parts of themselves within. And so it is like having multiple yous, and it is annoying. I don't want to say it's annoying, but it can be a lot, I would say. But I don't think the goal is to, what do you call it? The goal is not to answer to all desires, right? What you want within your being is one sound, if that makes sense, one voice, right? When you got multiple voices or multiple things kind of going in opposite directions, that's where you get chaos, right? And so the goal is to get everybody on one accord, subconscious, conscious. Everybody needs to be exactly harmony, indeed. When you're in a place, and honestly, that harmony, you only get there by way of mastering yourself, right? And that's kind of for the rest of your life. So, oh, hello, Sean. Hey. We were discussing a lot, actually. We were just discussing the subconscious, and hey, hey, no, we were just discussing the subconscious, and I think, yes, what keeps people stuck in their old reality, right? I'm gonna attach this form one more time. Not attach. It's another message. Congratulations. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would say I'm never doing that again, but that's probably a lie. But let me just pin this really quickly. Anyways, that's a free form for my new offer that I have. It's a pattern breaking strategy session. So basically, we're discussing patterns, right? One of the things that I have observed in people and myself, and just past versions and whatnot, is what keeps people in old behavioral loops, right? Old patterns. And one of the things that keeps people there are the rewards associated with old timelines. All that really means is that who I was last year, there were rewards for that identity, right? Now, what keeps people from evolving is if those rewards are still worthy to be retained or maintained, right? So basically, you're attached to what was, you're attached to the community, you're attached to the validation that you received from being who you were, right? You are, I want to say, attached to, let's say, the community that supported who you were, right? These are rewards that reinforce the old pattern, and they keep you anchored in an old reality. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. However, if you have a desire to go beyond the old pattern, so let's say you have an imagined outcome, right? I want to make this much or whatever, right? In a month or in a year, and this is an amount you've never made before, right? What you would have to do is sacrifice the old pattern. And by way of sacrificing the old pattern, you sacrifice the old identity. That's why there's mourning, and that's why people don't like evolving beyond their old behavioral patterns or whatever, is because of the rewards that keep you anchored in that old timeline, right? And so those are people and the validation that comes with that, right? So if I validate or validated your personality, which is your personal reality, years ago, right? And that validation made you feel something, maybe some type of dopamine, right? One of the things that keeps people anchored in the past are the chemical reactions that are associated with your emotions, right? So like, let's say hi Golden Insight, let's say the dopamine, right? That's associated with any type of reward that you get. Your nervous system, your subconscious, but more so your nervous system, is going to stay attached to not only what feels safe, but what feels good, right? And so this is how people kind of stay where they are. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you are required to pivot. And in that case, I don't want to say you won't be able to pivot, but it will be extremely hard because of your attachment to that old identity, the old community, the old rewards, the validation, whatever, right? Sacrificing a pattern is sacrificing an entire reality that keeps you anchored in that pattern and therefore an identity. And so when people say to change your life, you have to become someone else, that's exactly what they mean. You're literally just sacrificing an identity to become someone else by way of sacrificing an old pattern. And so I think I'm kind of like, I know I said that because of what I'm, essentially requiring people to do, which is to not only get uncomfortable, but to become safe in something different, right? This is not for everyone. This is really for people who are sick of the old, right? You have to be dissatisfied with the old enough to move out of it. This is not for people who are satisfied with, where they, like, I'm not trying to generate something that's not there, which is dissatisfaction, right? If you're not dissatisfied, then there's no need. But because there is, the only thing that is constant is change. One of the things that you will absolutely need to be good at is pivoting, right? Being mentally agile, right? And so a ship that cannot pivot is a ship that sinks eventually. And so being able to shift between timelines determines survival, right? Getting to the highest timeline or the highest frequency or your highest good, whatever, that will also ensure that you survive, right? In this world with AI, taking over, and more so with the requirement to collaborate with AI, people of all ages will be required to pivot, right? Everybody is going to have to pivot. Thank you for the follow. And so when I think about the inability to pivot, right, which is really just your subconscious and your nervous system being addicted to what is familiar because it feels safe, that is self-sabotage, right? And what I am offering is a strategy session that allows you to disrupt old patterns that are sabotaging you, right? Or keeping you from a desired outcome and therefore a desired timeline. You got to shift identities in order to shift into a new timeline, right? Thank you for the follow. And so that is what this strategy session is offering, right? I am essentially, it's a 2-hour deep dive, right? I'm essentially requiring of you, the client, right, to identify the behavioral loop. Once we identify the behavioral loop, what we do is we go and we, hold on, I'll thank you for the follow. You identify the behavioral loop, right? And then I'm teaching you how to unlearn. I'm teaching you how to unlearn. Well, actually, that's a really good question. Unlearn or relearn. When you think about breaking a pattern, you must create a new one, right? So you're not really unlearning, you're creating something new, and so you're learning something different, right? You're learning a completely different pattern, right? So we're creating something new in an effort to break the old, if that makes sense, right? And so in order to disrupt a pattern, you must create a new pattern. So I'm creating a new groove or a new neural pathway in the brain. It's an update, correct? And so that's kind of the goal, right? Updating the programming. And that's the thing, when you think about programs, these programs are located in your subconscious, right? Subconscious, or the conscious underneath the conscious, right? That is the womb that holds all of your patterns, your fears, your memories, right? Your beliefs, right? This is what keeps you anchored in realities, in undesirable realities, right? My goal is to trace back in the subconscious, right? We identify the behavioral loop and then we trace it back to its root. Where did this belief come from, right? We identify the triggers and whatnot. And then once we unearth the root, we then come up with a 30-day custom mechanism for you to stick to in rituals, tangible rituals, for you to stick to so that you can create something new, right? So the goal is to essentially get clarity on what is sabotaging you, right? What is keeping you from being able to jump from one timeline to another. In order to jump from one timeline to another, you must shed the old identity. The old identity is simply the old pattern, which is also the old program, right? Your software system is your subconscious, right? Hardware is the subconscious. Would you say most of the roots come from family, culture, and societal norms? I would say reinforcement of those roots. Like, yes, I understand when I think about family, right? So what do you call those things? Curses, generational curses, right? That is a thing. When you think about a family that has never broken a pattern, right? And so they just did the same thing. In other words, where does the original programming come from? So that is what we're mapping out, or that is what we are getting clarity on in the session, right? It can come from a multitude of places. It can come from family. It can come from culture, right? The point is, when you think about family and culture, these things reinforce patterns so that you do not detach from them, right? So family is supposed to reward you in the pattern that you are carrying on, right? AKA the legacy that you are carrying on, be it a legacy in poverty or a legacy in something else, right? Culture is supposed to reward you, and then that reward reinforces the pattern, right? Societal norms, it's the same thing. They all function the same way, right? In terms of the roots, right? It can come from your mother, right? It can come from what you saw your dad do, or your family do, or the culture, or your religion. When you think about roots, they can come from many different places, right? And so if the question is, where does your root come? Because there's no single place that applies to all. This is not like a one fits all kind of thing, right? And after reinforcement, you're pushed to stay in the comfort zone. Correct, right? And typically, if I want to discourage you from detaching from the loop, right, or from the pattern, I may isolate you, right? I may, what's something else that families do or communities do? Disown, right? I have to, shame is punishment, right? Or it's a reward as a result of you not sticking to the program. And so these are things that keep people anchored in a timeline. They detach themselves from you. Who is they detach themselves from you? I don't think I'm understanding. To stay in the comfort zone of the program. The family. Right, exactly. Yes. The family detaches from you. Absolutely. And so that is what it means to shed an old identity, right? If you decide to go against the norm, correct. That's what it means to shed an old identity. You're shedding the pattern, yes, but you're shedding everything that was attached to that pattern. That means family, right? And it doesn't have to be forever. It can just be temporarily, right? It's not dramatic, right? But it feels that way when you are first starting to disrupt a pattern and therefore an identity, right? And so when you think about when people say that you must become someone new, right, in order to experience something new, all that means is you have to detach or let go of the old pattern and everything that was associated with that old pattern, right? And so that is really what it also means to shift timelines. So I wrote a paper. I shared it with my audience, my email list. I wrote a paper and it became a news item on my university's chemistry department webpage, right? I can share that, but basically, are you a writer? I am a writer. I am a writer. I do have a book already out. It's on my website. But when I think about what me too, nice to meet you as well. Nice to meet you as well. But essentially, that is what I'm doing with my strategy session, right? I'm taking a bunch of people who desire, right, to not only change their outcome, but you're trying to change your reality. You cannot change your reality unless you change your identity. And that was one of the things that I discussed in my paper. When I think about changing my identity, or better yet, when I think about imagining a new reality, right? Everything that I imagine already exists, right? According to quantum mechanics and, the Schrodinger equation or whatever. I'm not going to get too sciencey because this live will go way longer. But I'll probably just discuss it tomorrow, and you can't change your identity until you understand so to add on to that, until you understand who you are, yes, you must accept where you are right now in its entirety in order to change. Otherwise, you cannot change unless you understand who you are and where you are at the root, right? I'm not at my goal, so where am I? I'm like way below it. I'm at the very bottom. Okay, cool. Let's work from there. And so once you know who you are currently, now you have to get in touch, in tune with people or in environments that are operating on a frequency that is different from your current reality, right? You cannot rely on what you know. What you know cannot get you to the next level. You have to get in touch with the frequency, a desired frequency, right? That mirrors a reality that you desire to be in, right? The difference between where you are and where you desire to be is a difference in frequency. You're operating on a frequency that does not allow you to inherit a new reality and therefore jump into a different timeline, right? That timeline, so for example, people who say, oh, I want to be a millionaire, right? What is the frequency of a millionaire? What does it feel like to hold and maintain that type of money, right? What is it like to be in the rooms with those of, millionaire mindsets, right? Or better yet, what types of conversations do they have? Would you say frequency is similar to... Yeah, so when I think about frequency, vibrations, energy, right? Science is just spirituality translated, right? They're not different. They're actually one and the same, right? Science gives reason to why things are the way that they are in spirituality, right? Things sound woo-woo in spirituality because people don't have the language to explain why things are the way that they are. But there's always a reason, and science anchors spirituality, right? And so it's not just, you know, kind of in the air. It's just like, oh, why is this the way that it is? Because it is. Okay, yes, but there's a deeper reason, right? And so spirituality, frequency, it's all the same thing, right? Science is just a translation of spirituality. It's not different. That's what I want to definitely point out. There is no difference between them. Science is literally just a translation of spirituality, right? And so when I talk about your attachment to old patterns, right? You know, think about the strength of a covalent bond. And this strength in this situation is determined by the reward that your nervous system associates with that old timeline and the safety, right, that it associates with that old timeline. So my nervous system, my body, my vessel, right, which is an animal in essence, or at the baseline, at the core, right, is charged with the responsibility of making sure that I survive by any means necessary. What that means is that it doesn't give a damn about expansion, right? And so when I think about my attachment or tie to the past, I'm also thinking about my vessel and my nervous system's attachment to safety, what was, right, the familiar, right? This is why people can't get out of patterns, because what is familiar is what is safe to the body, even if it is sabotage, even if it is pain, even if it is abuse. If it is a pattern that you are used to running in your subconscious and has now become familiar to your nervous system and your body, you're not going to let that go, because your nervous system knows the ins and outs of what is familiar, right? You're not going to desire to let it go until you I don't know what that means, but until you, I want to say, grow beyond or ascend beyond what was, right? And in order to do that, to me, the desired outcome must be greater than what feels safe, right? So I'm really asking people to go beyond their baseline, which is that of an animal. So back to the whole covalent bond, right? To me, that bond is strong depending on the emotions associated with the past, right? And so the reward, the dopamine, the validation, all of these things is a part of the bond, the strength of the bond between me and the familiar, right? And the first thing that will allow me to slowly detach from the familiar is my dissatisfaction with it, right? So we have to start with desire first. And with desire, that's when, you know, all other doors open. But if you don't desire to move beyond safety, right? Or better yet, you want the rewards of those who have moved beyond safety without committing to the process yourself, it's not going to work for you, right? You have to leave the exactly. You not only have to leave it, you got to stay out of it, right? So it's one thing to leave it. You can leave it for a day, you can leave it for a week. The point is, I'm trying to get you to stay out of it in such a way where if you're nervous and when you think about what was, your body becomes physically uncomfortable, right? Because you are no longer attached to the rewards of what was, right? What is rewarding enough to keep you anchored in either I want to say the present, aka the new reality, right? And so the goal is not just to leave it, is to stay out of it. And in order to do that, maybe you should be secluded. So yes, I agree with that. You do need to remove yourself from people who reinforce the old reality. What does that mean? You need to remove yourself from people who only know you, right? Who only know the old you, can only interact with the old version of you, the old identity, the old pattern, right? You do need to remove yourself from those people. But in that, you must surround yourself with people who are on the same path, either in breaking patterns, right? Timeline, it's the same thing. Breaking a pattern, timeline jumping, manifesting something different, becoming someone different. All of that is the same thing. You must surround yourself with people like that, who are of that ilk and of that frequency, so that you can be in an environment that reinforces the new pattern. Otherwise, you will regress. It's not enough to be isolated, right? Isolation is not enough. There's nothing around you that is reinforcing the new identity, and so you're likely to fall off, and you're likely to keep falling off. Now, that is natural, right? Naturally, humans, we need endless opportunities to get this thing right, right? Endless opportunities to pivot into a new reality, right? To embody a new pattern, you need endless opportunities. However, but let's say a person is working in the negative. What do you mean? Can you expound? Person in the negative. In the negative, what, in the negative, like in a negative environment, or yeah, expound on that. I'm sure you're typing. They must hit 0 before they, interesting. Okay, so 0 is a seclusion. I get what you're saying. So you must start from the bottom in order to get to where you are. That makes sense. Yes, we are on the same page here. So if I am to translate that, given that we're saying the same thing, what it really means to start from 0 is to essentially, if I'm sacrificing an old pattern, then I'm sacrificing the old reality. That means everybody that was associated with that old reality that could enforce the old pattern, and therefore that will result in me regressing back into old ways, old patterns, old behavioral loops, right? An old personality, which is my personal reality, right? So yes, you must start from 0, but all 0 is you starting in a place like, and they can't jump into a new friend group or hang around. No, okay, so no, you're good, you're fine. So okay, when you are starting from 0, right? Yes, you need to get away from the people who reinforced an old pattern in order for you to get to know the new identity. Absolutely yes. But you also, in that seclusion, you should be anyways, in that seclusion, you should be seeking out people who are of a new mind, right? Or a new conscious, right? You should be Mac is funny. You should be seeking out people, I want to say, who are on the same timeline or on the same frequency that you desire to be in, right? Thank you for the follow, Mac. It's not enough to be secluded, right? You need conscious people who are of a higher frequency or whatever, to reinforce the new pattern and therefore the new identity. And so when you hang around people who are more conscious, what this does is it makes you uncomfortable in the old, which is exactly what you need to stay out of it, right? Because we're trying to get into a new normal, a new pattern, a new reality, right? So with that in mind, in a few minutes I have to go on another meeting, but with that in mind, I have my pattern breaking strategy set. But how do you seek people you've never discovered? How do you gauge positive frequencies? Okay, so good question. if you've only ever known how do you seek? Okay, so when I was moving from one identity, one belief system into another, right, which is a different identity, right? When you are moving from, the old into the new and whatnot, your desire to be around people of your ilk or of a similar mindset, not only will it attract, but you are going to be able to find people whose frequency matches up with that, with what you desire, right? With what you desire to embody, because it's going to be attractive to you, right? If that makes sense, right? Law of attraction, right? And so you don't really, it doesn't have a look. You can feel, you have to be in alignment with that energy. You have to get, would you say it's like going from being blind to wearing glass? Yes, I would say that when you are in isolation due to this new identity that you are embodying, you're going to want to seek connection with those who are on a similar path, right? Or who have already arrived at the outcome or at the desired reality, right? And seek and you shall find. Okay? So if you are actively seeking, right? Like for example, you're on this live. This is you seeking, right? Meaning you don't have perfect eyesight, you can see, but the world is brand new to you. I understand what you're saying, and to me what that is a change in perception. And your belief determines your perception, so yes. I would say it is like going from kind of a wonky eyesight to a new eyesight, right? Or a different lens, different prescription. Because when you are operating in an old belief system and therefore an old pattern, you do see life, reality, your circumstances, your relationships, you see that very differently than how you would see it in the new belief and therefore the new pattern, right? So I've actually got to log into another meeting, but before I leave, my strategy session is open. What I will actually ask you guys to do is to just fill out this Google form, right? It's an interest form into the strategy session, where we'll basically be doing a 2-hour one-on-one deep dive, right? Where we're getting clarity on the behavioral loop, right? Oh no, the live is gonna end in 5 minutes. Okay, let me just, guys, can you like it? Like the live really quickly so it doesn't end. I'm trying to get this thing. Okay, cool. All right, cool. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Thank you. So, okay, cool. It didn't end. So, right. So what I was saying was my one-on-one 2-hour deep dives. I just opened them. Just opened the strategy session. It's a pattern breaking session. The form is open right now, right? And what that is an interest form. It lets me know what it is that it gives me insight, right, into what I'm basically working with so that I can develop or come up with some type of, let me pin that again, I'm sorry, so that I can put together a customized 30-day mechanism for you to commit to, right? And this is the prerequisite into the 4-week coaching container, in which we will actually integrate this new pattern by way of reinforcement, right? But before we get to the coaching container, we got to get to the strategy session so that we can get clarity on what it is that we're actually dealing with, right? And then come up with a plan. And even before doing that, we're going to trace back. Can't click on it. Could you DM it to me? Absolutely, I got you. I'll just DM it to you. I'll probably DM it to all of you who have joined. But super excited to work with you guys. They're open. My schedule is open, right? But that's the interest form. And that gives me insight into what I'm dealing with and how our strategy session will actually go. so that you can get the most out of those 2 hours. But yeah, it's 6:34. The meeting has already, it's fine. They're fine. I'm not gonna, like, yeah. But yeah, I will DM you guys. Thank you all for coming. I'll probably do this again tomorrow. I would say share this live, but I've got to go. But again, thank you for attending. And yeah, I'll DM you guys. I got you with the form. All right. See you guys.